talk about that, promise and hope, and give some context to it. I was struggling with how to begin my sermon today. For those of you who don't know this, my sleep habits aren't exactly great, and so I spend much of many nights sitting in the rocking chair in the bedroom, sometimes with the radio on, sometimes not. Most often with it on. And I do a lot of thinking, and I do a lot of praying too. And I gotta tell you, sitting and listening to what's on the radio, let's say between 1 o'clock and 5 o'clock, it'll get your attention. You know, the kids aren't playing around, and you know, there's a whole lot of background noise, so you can actually pay attention to what's listening. And sometimes to hear, particularly CBC, because that tends to be a much more world current events type station than is CJD, for example. The world's a pretty messed up place. You know, it's a pretty messed up place, and it's easy to be discouraged, and it's easy to say, you know what, I'm going to back up. I'm going to huddle in my own little bailiwick and surround myself with the friends that I like and that I trust, and we're just going to hunker down and wait for, well, I guess it's wait for the end, whatever end there is. You know, some of the things that are going on really help that sense of let's just withdraw from this mess. I got to tell you, and I'm not making a political statement here, but some of what I've heard Donald Trump say, and some of the comments that I've read on Facebook, particularly about what he said, it sent shivers up my spine. They really do. It sent shivers up my spine, and maybe it's dramatic, maybe not. Some of the things that I'm reading, I actually wrote a Facebook post, and I said, you know, I'm reminded of an Austrian painter with little talent, painter and paper hanger with little talent, who played on people's fears and dread, and look what he was able to do. You know, I fear this. I fear some of the things that are happening around the issue of Syrian refugees. You know, there was that presidential candidate in the States that said he wants to build a wall between the States and Canada, or fence between the States and Canada, to keep foreigners out. And then, of course, there's all those, you know, mature responses that say, we're going to build a fence to keep Donald Trump out. And it gets sillier and sillier, but beneath the silliness of it all, you really get the sense that there's a lot of fear out there. There's a lot of fear. It used to be in the old days. I'm reading a rather thick book on the Battle of Waterloo, like literally about that thick. You can have it after, Walter. Unless okay. And it's amazing, you know, these guys are all in their uniforms. They really respected the uniforms. Nobody changed uniforms or took off their uniform. And some of the battles, it's like a party. You know, you got the armies facing each other, and then on the sidelines, just like a football game, you got the spectators. You know, you got the camp followers and the cooks and the people selling bread to the soldiers, and you know, so it's like, okay, we're gonna, you know, shoot the Jesus out of you, and then we're gonna, you know, lunchtime, and then you go back at it, and it's like, wow. And then there was the war that ended all wars, right? Remember that one, First World War? That changed war. You can't use a Napoleonic strategy when you got machine guns. It just doesn't work any longer. And then, of course, that war to end all wars turned out not to be the war to end all wars. So you had the Second World War, and now we're in a different thing where you don't know who the enemy is or where they are, but you do know that the enemy might live on the West Island. 16-year-old just sentenced, and you wonder what's happening. How did it happen? How close to home is this going to come? Surely not my son. Surely not my daughter. But everybody's somebody's daughter and somebody's son. And so I really feel there's a lot of fear going on. That's one side of things. And on the other side of things, I'm looking at the church. And for an organism that is supposed to be empowered by the Spirit of God, sometimes we're pretty pathetic. And I'm not referring here to the financial side of things. Like, leave that for a moment. That's a symptom. But we are in the business of transforming the world. And we're not really doing that great a job of it. Consider for a second Jesus' ministry. Look at the things that he did. He visited the sick. He dealt with the outcasts. He practiced gender equality. I'm going to do a little bit of digression in a little while on that one. He confronted throughout systems. He dealt with the military. And I could go on. Like I have about 6 more that I was going to list. Time prevents me from doing that. But if you look at the things that he did, at the people individually and the people groups that he engaged with, I'd like to suggest to you that the needs represented by those encounters are exactly the same as the needs that we have in our society today. Okay? Exactly the same. The poor, the marginalized, the outcast, gender-based differentiations. Just a short digression. I was talking to somebody about this sermon this week, and the place of women in the church. This is an individual who believes that women do have a very, very vital, valuable role in church, but it just shouldn't be leadership. The biblical model of that is male. And I challenge that by saying, when you look at the Gospels, all the post-resurrection experiences, first to the women. It's only by the time of Paul, when the Gospels started going out into the world, where people are concerned about all of these things, that Paul takes the women out of the resurrection experiences. He's the one that gets the women out of the resurrection experiences, because he knows that if he was to refer to women in talking about Jesus being raised from the dead, he will lose credibility based on the society that he was a part of, not based on the gospel that he inherited. So Paul teaches us there that we tailor what we say to what the audience is capable of hearing, but we don't compromise. Because when he spoke about the role of women in the church, he never said that women weren't to prophesy. He never said that women were to be absent or kept outside in the gallery. Women were to be present. And he also basically says to women, look, don't try to be like a man. Be a woman. And I'm going to talk about that at another time, because I think it's something that we've got to engage. I don't want to really mess with the gospel. And so you look at the church today, and the way we assemble, the way we run ourselves, the differentiations we make, the arguments we have, they seem to me to reflect a lot more of our fallen humanity than they do of the light of Christ amongst us. Jesus broke down barriers where many looked at that, wherever there was a barrier broken down, even in great personal challenge, and ultimately his death, of course. So where does that leave us in the church? The God that I believe in is a God of promise. And the church that I was ordained into as well is, I guess, a church of promise. And I want to tell you a story now that I've never used in a sermon before. I've never told it in a sermon before. But it's something that is deeply meaningful to me, personally. And I'll tell you the story and then I'll tell you why I'm telling you. Most of you know that from a very young age, from the age of 8, I wanted to be a minister. The reasons changed as I matured. That happens with all of us. But eventually the day came when I had met with Bishop Hollis, and for some strange reason only known to him and God, he approved me to study for ministry. And finally, at age 18 or 19, having wanted to be a minister since I was 8, I was in the place where I was going to be trained to be a minister. And I will tell you, without exaggeration, without hyperbole, and without telling you the specifics of it. Entering seminary was, at that point in my life, the bitterest disappointment of my life. It was horrible. I found it catty. I found it childish. I found it confusing. My New Testament professor started each semester by saying, I'd like you to know that I don't believe in the miracles, I don't believe in the resurrection of Jesus. I believe this is all mythology invented by people who wanted to spread a particular message. And we went on like that. And you're going, holy, like, I'm here to be good. And then there were some specific things that happened as well. Because of time, I'll cut out a lot of it. I got to the point where I was so distressed that this was what I had said I was going to do all my life, what I wanted to do all my life. And it was a bitter, bitter disappointment. To me, it had a lot more to do with egos and social status than it did anything to do with God. And so I did something that I never could possibly have imagined that I was going to do. I got the papers to withdraw from the guild. That was after a final thing, where I discovered my director of studies had lied to me. He had told me that in order to graduate, I would need New Testament Greek. And so I dutifully started my New Testament Greek, and I got to tell you, New Testament Greek, I can still conjugate the word malepo, which means to see. That's about it. I can phonetically read it. But he told me I needed it to be able to graduate and become a minister. But it was bringing me down in every other subject. Like I had Greek and me. Sulaki and I are good together, but that's about it. So I spoke to my academic advisor, whose name was Keith Markell, the United Minister. And because I needed an answer, like what am I going to do here? And so he said, well, who told you you needed Greek? I said, my director of studies did. He said I could graduate with a Greek. He says, oh, no. If you want to get a master's after, then you're going to need a biblical language. But nobody gets wrapped up. You don't need Greek. And so I went, oh, can I drop it? Sure, what would you like to take? Is there any psychology? Because it struck me that after you're ordained, you start counseling which psychology you know? Instead if I take every psychology course I could. He said, sure! And he gave me this list, and so I registered for a psychology course. Then I went back to college, and I met with my director of studies. His name was Don. And I said, Don, you told me that I needed Greek to graduate. And Keith Markell told me that was not true. He said, well, I knew that if I told you you needed it, if I did tell you you needed it, you wouldn't take it. And I said, so you lied to me, because you want me to go on and get a master's after, without ever asking me about one. That was the final. So I got the paper to withdraw from McGill and withdraw from the seminary. And I filled it all out. The only thing was a signature. All that I had to do was sign it and bring it to the principal of the college. His name was Harry Hilchey at the time. And one of the things I used to do, and still do, I used to take an afternoon nap at the end of the day. And I'm not going to tell you everything, but I'm going to tell you a little bit. I had a series of 3 consecutive dreams. And I'm not going to say that the Holy Spirit of God planted these dreams in my brain. I'm also not going to say they came purely from my psychology, where I was in my own soul. I don't know the answer to that. But these 3 dreams changed my life. The first one, and it's going to sound weird, but you know dreams. I was in the seminary with a couple of my friends, and a limousine pulled up. We were standing in the front entranceway. A limousine pulled up, and it was, it was for us. So we went to the limousine, the 3 of us, and we go around the block once. Like the block doesn't exist as it existed like we went around the block once. Between us and the seminary, it was like there was a layer of cellophane. Went around twice, it was like wax paper. And then went around a 3rd time and it was gone. And we went up the hill, and for those of you that know University Street, at the top of the hill is Royal Victoria Hospital. So at the top of the hill wasn't Royal Victoria Hospital, but something that looked like a bunker, a second World War bunker, you know, with an entrance. And the three of us got out of the car and went down some steps into this subterranean type thing. And there was a hallway and rooms on either side. And the two who were with me, whose names I will not mention, there were various things going on in the room. And I know at this point it can sound like a bad religious joke, but there were various things going on in the rooms, and they were attracted to different things. So they went their own way, and I was left by myself. And as I walked past the room, there was a bunch of people that were having a party, and there was music being played by a person on an instrument that looked sort of like a sitar, but it wasn't really a sitar. And it was horrible. God, it was horrible. And so I went into the room and I said, no, that's not it. You got to tune it. And I sort of sat down and tuned it. And all of a sudden it started sounding really nice. And everybody in the room absolutely hated it. Hated it. It was painful to them. And I was like, this was nice all of a sudden. You know it's a dream, right? So it's weird. They hated it. They really hated it. And then it struck me where I was. Because everything was red and ugly. And I was in hell. You know? And there's another scene there where I ran away. People started chasing me. And I ran away. I realized that they wanted to kill me because I wasn't part of their camp. Well, the interesting thing is, or an interesting thing is, I woke up from that dream, sort of in a crouched position on the floor of my room in the seminary with my hands behind my head like that. And the last words were, he's not one of us. Interesting, huh? And I was thinking, when I woke up from that dream, I was weak and I was sweating. And it's very interesting because I went out and I referred to Archbishop Luwum and Erasmus Peter Abego before. My meeting with Archbishop Luwum, that's when it happened. I had to see people. And so I went over to Erasmus's room and he opened the door and he said, "It is Uganda." And I said, "You look like that." And I came in and I met Archbishop Luwum and stuff. And that was one of three. I'm not going to tell you the other two. But based on that, it was like, no, I belong in ministry. And whatever there is that opposes or leads me away or hurts or harms, I got to resist that. And as I say, whether it was from God or whether it was from my own brain or whatever, or some combination of the two, I think it's often with us, for all of us, some combination of the two. I never signed that form. And it gave me a very clear sense, among many other things, that one of my jobs, one of my responsibilities as someone who's become a minister, was to oppose dark forces. But not to oppose dark forces just by calling them out and saying, that's a dark force over there, but by presenting the alternative. And if I sort of lost you on this, I would understand if you were lost. The tuning of the instrument, to me, represents that. But it's not just a matter of, cursing the darkness, as they say, but light the candle. And I realized through that and through some other things that my role as a Christian, as a minister, was to, yes, call things what they were, but also present the alternative, present the light, the hope, the possibilities, the options. And when my mind shifted from that, from where it was to that, things started to change. And I began to see opportunities where I hadn't seen opportunities before. My student placement was at Grace Church in Point St. Charles. A very imperfect church, like they all are. But I began to see possibilities. And I began to see the people, while they might not be interested in churchianity, that most people were really interested in the kind of things church was supposed to stand for. And I discovered, during a time when everybody said, oh, there's no kids left in the church, there's no young people, where are all the teenagers? It was the end of the youth group era. I discovered, you know what? It is easy to build a youth ministry, easy to build a Sunday school, easy to build a program. As long as you're willing to do what's necessary so that you can actually be understood when you're speaking. And that means doing a lot of listening all times first. And so for the past 4 years, where we've been, there's been youth ministry. Amongst other things, it's just not that hard. All you've got to do is light your candle. That's all you've got to do. You just got to light the candle. And then, if the candle's lit, you get the candle to light other candles. Now, where am I going with this? And I look about the dream, and how the dream represented to me what I was supposed to do with my life. And within that was God's promise. What I'd like to suggest is, whether you've had a dream or not, how I interpret that for my life in ministry has something to say to all of us. That you, as a person who is here, your job is, call darkness, darkness. Don't mess around with it. Don't keep your voice shut. Don't shut your... That was two things. That was, don't shut your eyes and don't shut up. You get what I mean. Blew my own thing. You got to call it darkness. You got to call it what it is. There's a lot of evil in the world, and it's not just people who weren't potty trained correctly. There's evil in the world. There's people who want to do your harm, who want to do your children harm. There is that, and there are people who have dedicated their lives to destruction, and there are people who want to be elected to public office, who, I'm not willing to say they're evil, because that's not my judgment today, but are really messed up, man. They're not just half a bubble off center. They are really, really messed up. And if they get in, they will destroy this planet. You got to call it what it is. You've got to call it what it is. And stuff that happens at work, or stuff that happens in the community, stuff that happens when you're shopping, you've got to call it what it is. Because you know what? Sometimes people who would like to live the kind of life that they would like to live, they don't know how, because they haven't been taught, they've never heard, they've never seen. Do you remember that story I told a long time ago about this kid who was so in trouble with school because she had stolen the set of felt pens from one of her classmates? And she being caught. And so the teacher sent a note home. There was going to be this big meeting with the principal and the parents and all the rest of it. And the dad said to her when he found out, he was furious his daughter had stolen these pens. And he said, "Damn it, girl, if you wanted some, I would have brought you some from work." You know? Man, don't you get it? Don't you get it? Can't you see? So call evil what it is. You've got an obligation to do that. Not just because you're here in the church and Christianity and stuff, but because you're a human being. You've got to call it what it is. You've got to do it. You've got to be willing to see it in your life, darkness in your own life, and in the world around you. Because that's the other thing that Jesus did. He didn't only do good stuff. He called bad stuff bad stuff. He confronted it. He confronted as well. And it really got in trouble, particularly with the religious people. Is there something we can do that this would become simple for us? People who've got your newsletters and read it. I put in this thing about the menorah, right? I just totally lost my train of thought there for a second. And you know the story of the menorah. The menorah was a decoration in the temple, And during the reign of Antiochus Epiphanes, the Jews were under persecution. There was a war and all the rest of it. And what ended up happening was the temple was being desecrated, and the oil was being desecrated. And there turned out to be only one container of oil with the print of the high priest, and the seal still intact. And it was an oil to last for 1 day. And what ended up happening was it lasted for 8 days. And so at Hanukkah, when the menorah is lit, it's to remember God's providence, what is considered to be a miracle of God's intervention. A demonstration of God that He would not abandon His people, that He would never forget His promise. And no matter how dark things look, no matter how big and bad the enemy looks, God will never abandon us, nor will He abandon His promises to us. And so, each night of Hanukkah, there's a candle in the center, and then there's 8 other candles. The candle in the center is called the shamash. And that's the candle that you use. You don't light the candles with a match. You light the candles with the shamash. And after 8 days, the whole of the menorah is lit, as the story is told again and again in the prayers of prayer. It seems to me that the menorah could be a pretty good symbol for Christians too. And in fact, Christmas Eve, the menorah is going to make its appearance here. Instead of calling Him Jesus Christ, because people in our society have been inured, numbed to that name. It doesn't have power anymore. Well, intrinsically it does, but not verbally. What would happen if we started calling Him, instead of Jesus Christ, called Him Yeshua Shamash? Yeshua, because that's His name in Hebrew. Shamash, the light that lights. We do call Him Jesus, light of the world. And what if one of our symbols, just to remind ourselves of what it's supposed to be like? If, as well as lighting the candles on our altar and all the rest of that, we were to light a menorah, and that there was a candle in the center, and that candle represents Yeshua, Shamash, Jesus, the light of the world, and that the other candles were lit by that center candle, by us. And of course, the more candles are lit, the brighter things get. The message of the gospel is something that resonates with the human heart. Love, hope, eternal life, goodness, holiness, health in all its forms, the defeat of darkness and tyranny and oppression. It really resonates with the human soul. But there's something about the church. And this could lead to another sermon for another time. It's not that we've lost the message, but somehow we need to rediscover how to release the power of it. Because just as God called me to be a light bearer, to tune the instruments, if you will, so He calls all of us to be bearers of His light. And this is a message that's particularly good at Christmas. I want to because on Christmas Eve, once again, we'll hear the gospel, and it's all about the light coming into the world. The light comes into the world, and the darkness has not the power to overcome. We are to be the light of the world. Every week, every time we gather together, here, at home, as families, let's dedicate ourselves to shining brightly. There's a lot of darkness. There needs to be even more light. Let's pray.
Yeah.
God, you have promised your light to the world. In the Old Testament, you lead by light. And the story of Hanukkah is just about one reminder of that. And then, of course, on Christmas Eve, an image that would have been so well understood by those who heard the story. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. In Him was life, and that life was the light for people everywhere. They would have seen it and understood it so clearly. But it's not our culture, and so sometimes we miss things. God, show us how we are to be your light bearers in the world. Even though sometimes the price you have to pay for that is pretty high. The world needs to hear the message. But in humility and with caring hearts. So God, as we prepare for Christmas, I pray that all those images that we use and the hymns that we sing, just everything about it, would serve to remind us that it really is about you and your caring and your love for humanity, and the promise to be with us always. Bless us, Lord, those whom we love, and give us opportunities to serve as you serve. In Jesus' name, amen. Now, as an outward visible sign, what we always hope and pray is increasingly spiritual reality to expand in charity's changing peace.